Welcome to Precon Geeks, your home for all things pre-construction. I'm your host, John Reich, and this week we are joined once again by our good friend, Ted Solomon. How are you doing, Ted?
I'm good. How are you, John?
Oh, doing fantastic. So today actually was the eclipse day. So
hmm
luckily, us here in Dallas, we were in the path of the totality of it. And so maybe not pre-con related, but I thought that was a very cool event. And I got some really good photos of everything building up to the eclipse and then the full corona around the sun. It was super cool, but it got crazy dark here. It was really weird.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous. I wish I was there for it.
Yeah, so you in New York, you only got what, 90%, you said?
So I was about 90% here on Long Island, in northwestern New York, Buffalo, up near Niagara Falls. They were full on in the path. So I had a couple friends drive up there for the weekend and today.
Yeah, it was definitely worth luckily I could just walk outside and see it, so that made it really cool, but everyone was having eclipse parties and outside checking things out. But thankfully, my kids didn't look at it without the glasses, which was good. And
Fantastic.
then the clouds here broke up a little bit just in time. We were really worried because it was like you couldn't see anything for 10, 15 minutes. And then right at about on a 137, because it went about 140. About 137, it broke through, and we were able to see the final little bit. And then we got to see the whole time it was fully dark. It was where we could see it through the clouds. It was pretty cool. Very
That's
cool.
great. I mean, I was, I was talking to my wife earlier today. I was saying that we live in a really fortunate time in astrological with these astrological phenomenon because the the moon is moving further
Right.
away from Earth. So, and it used to be closer. So, back when the Earth was young and the dinosaurs were here, the moon was much larger in the sky and it would blot out a lot more of the sun and it would get a lot darker. And now the moon's moving further away, and we live at this really awesome time where the the moon is perfectly positioned where it is just far enough that it's proportional to the size of the sun in its distance to the earth so that it perfectly blots out the sun. Pretty soon, it's not pretty soon, but in geologic terms, it's going to be the moon is going to be too small in our sky to blot out the entire sun.
To blot it out fully. Yeah. Yeah. No, I never thought about that. Yeah. So again, for the science minded, it is moving away about an inch to an inch and a half a year. So
Right.
we got a while. It's not going anywhere real soon. We'll
A
just
very
say that.
long one.
Very long time.
But
So yeah, so
that's
we were
not
talking earlier. You had a pretty cool story about some research that was done like almost over 100 years ago now. So
Yeah. So, the one of my favorite pieces of science that's ever been done is how two teams of researchers basically proved Einstein's theory of general relativity. And for those people that don't follow physics like I do, which is a little too closely for someone who isn't a physicist,
which
that's
is
the
probably
theory.
safe to say most of the population doesn't follow it probably the way you do.
Right,
So
probably. But that's the theory that space and time make a fabric, and gravity objects with larger mass create depressions in that fabric of space time and warp space time and stuff like that. So what these two teams of researchers did, is they used a solar eclipse that happened on May 29th, 1919, and they traveled to two separate locations, one location in South America and one location in Western Africa. They waited until totality. And this goes back to, we can predict these eclipses, to the
pretty tight.
second.
Yeah.
And even 100 years ago, we could. So they waited until totality, took pictures of the eclipse, specifically focusing on the stars behind the sun, and they were able to compare the locations of those stars at the time of the eclipse versus a when the sun is not in the way. So nighttime when we're on the other side of the sun. And they were able to determine that the sun's gravity warped the light from those stars by 0.0005 degrees. So basically proving that the fabric of space-time was bending the light, where it was bending and bending the light due to the weight or gravitational mass of the sun.
That is pretty cool. Yeah, gravitational lensing is always a fun topic for it's really fun at parties too.
Exactly. I mean, you just keep getting me here, and I keep talking about lenses of some sort. I'm talking about gravitational lensing, and thankfully this time I'm not talking about AR and VR lensing.
Yeah, no, that I thought it was very cool. Again, it's one of those kind of once in a lifetime things, and just being able to see something like that was it was really, really neat to do and really neat to share with my kids. And it was a very cool experience. So sorry you missed out, Ted.
Next time, I think 70 years, maybe it was 40 years.
There's one somewhere every year. It's just you got to travel.
Yeah, exactly.
So on a slightly, I guess, somewhat related, I mean, kind of world changing signs of the apocalypse, whatever you want to call it. Ted just lived through the earthquake up in New York.
Yes, well, technically it was in New Jersey.
But, okay.
We were earthquake 2024. We will rebuild. They had shirts made and for sale in Manhattan within 2 hours.
Wow, that's capitalism at its best, right there.
It was incredible. But second earthquake I've experienced. The first one was in 2014, so about 10 years ago. It was in Washington, D.C., a little bit bigger. We felt it all the way here.
Wow.
And then this one was in North Jersey. It's a little scary sometimes to think about it because, here in New York, we don't really design for seismic.
Right.
We design for wind loading, which is, and snow loading. But, when you're talking about lateral forces, we design for wind loading. So thankfully, this earthquake wasn't very big, but, a big one could cause some real issues.
Yeah, that would be not very good, especially if you're at, 60, 70th floor of a building. That would not be a fun time at all.
Absolutely.
So, since we've had these, signs of the apocalypse and disasters that are coming to the country and hitting everyone, we figured we'd talk about some pre-con disasters and essentially, just kind of talk about some of the worst stories we've ever had in terms of messing up an estimate or making a big mistake that could have been a real disaster. So we figured we'd share some of those stories with you guys. So mine, it's very simple, one that happens to just about everyone makes it at some point. But mine, I was doing I did a lot of healthcare work back in my estimating days, and I got a conceptual drawing. There was no scale on it. I was told what the scale was, did my estimate, did my takeoff, did a full bore estimate, and then found out later I was off by, I think it went from 1/8 to some odd scale, but I was off by a factor of about 35%. So my number I gave them, they were ready to go to the board and get it done, and they were awarding us the contract. And then we realized, wait, why is the building grown 30-something%? And well, it didn't. John just screwed up the scale the first time, and we had to go back and I had to eat some crow on that one. Thankfully, the project went forward. They got the additional funding. We had to make some concessions in terms of cost, like reduce some things and make some changes, but we got it going, and they actually built the project and everything worked out okay. But it was definitely had a couple days of not fun conversations that I had to have with both internal bosses and then to the client. I had to go and really try to figure something out. So that was probably the worst single mistake that I myself have made on a project. Sure. What about you?
Well, thankfully, this is one of the biggest ones that I've seen. Thankfully, I was the one who caught it, and it wasn't my mistake. But I was a young junior estimator. I maybe started about 3-4 months prior, and we were working on a foundation for a smallish 15 story building in New York City, um, and it was pile caps, so it wasn't anything giant mat slab or anything. It was just a lot of pile caps, and it turns out an estimator who had left about a year before had made a pile cap Excel workbook.
Ah,
And I'm working through it, and I finish all my pile caps. I plug in all my rebar, and I'm plugging it in. And I'm heavy civil, so we were using a not Destiny estimator. We were using a different software. I'm plugging it into the software, and the rebar comes back incredibly expensive. And for a junior estimator 3 months out to know that this was incredibly expensive, uh, there was a problem. So we went
yeah.
back me and one of the senior estimators went into the spreadsheet and found out the rebar was off by 2 orders of magnitude.
Oh, well, that's not that much. It's okay.
Yeah,
No big deal.
that was a wake up call to me early on. Always check your formulas.
Yeah, that one's a big one. That's yeah, that one's bad. That's another reason, that's why you move to these platforms, whatever platform you want to move to. Excel is only as good as the formulas you write in it, right? So
Exactly.
that's the downside. And it's always the guy who leaves that screws up the estimate. That's funny how that
Right?
always works.
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah, so probably another one that I've had it was a little bit different situation, but this was actually a GMP we went to, and it was several $100 million GMP job. And we leveled out all the bids, did all of our work, we felt a really solid number, really solid sub base. So we go and you turn it in, and then you start the negotiations afterwards, right? So you always turn in your number, owner agrees to it, everyone's good. Well, for some reason, the ownership team did not like some of the subs that we selected, and they said, "Hey, we would really like to go to your second subs." And on the sheet, we go to it. We're like, "Yeah, here's the difference. Here's the delta you're gonna have to pay," and that's what it is. They agreed to it. They said, "Okay, start talking to these guys instead." So we start going to the second subs, and we had one trade in particular, and this was a fairly large trade. It was about a $12 million package is what we carried in the number, and second guy was about $1 million higher. So we said, okay, well, we'll talk to them and see what we can do. Well, they agreed to pay the million. We go in and we realize that when he was leveled, because he was the second bidder, the I guess proper amount of time was not put into making sure that he had the right scope and everything was covered. And what we originally told the owner was $1 million ad was ended up being about 2.5. And that's a fairly sizable delta. And we got to it. We got to the point where we're like, hey, that's what the difference is. We can't make it up. And so again, we had to have those same types of awkward conversations of, hey, we got the delta, but it wasn't really what we told you it was before. We've gone back and we've really scoped them out well, and ended up you're gonna have to pay an extra 2.5 million instead of the one. And needless to say, they were not enamored of that conversation. Didn't love that conversation, but again, end of the day, it worked out. They ended up we ended up directly contracting with them, and they were able to come off their number a little bit, and then the owner was able to make up the difference. So it worked out okay. But again, one of those awkward. Whenever it's happening, we thought I was ready to be looking for a job pretty quickly if we weren't able to figure it out. But yeah, worked out okay. So a lot of times that's how these things work out. It's funny
Yeah,
that
well,
most of the time they
when
work out.
when you do the type of work I used to bid all the time, you get locked in to those numbers.
Real
As
quick.
soon as if you're the low bidder, and if you don't catch it before the notice to proceed, there's no renegotiating.
Yeah.
Worst case, you let the bond expire. But if you proceed, and you catch it later, it's done.
Yeah, you don't have
So
a choice at that point.
yeah, I mean I think one of the worst that personally happened to me, and it was more so just a waste of a lot of people's time and effort and just overhead. Um, we were working on a design build civil project, and I had heard of this brand new material that I thought was a miracle. And they've been starting to use it all over the world, and it was recycled, and it was going to save us a boatload of money, and it was going to save us a boatload of time, and it was good. We were going to win the job because of it. And I worked on bidding the project with it. I created some value engineering plans. I researched the crap out of this project. I got on the phone with the owner of the company that manufactures the project. I got like 4 references of contractors that use the product. I got my executive leadership on the phone with the owner of the company and the owner of the project. And the project said, the owner said, well, has it been used in America for this application? And the owner of the company said, well, no. And the representative from the New York State Department of Transportation said, well, we're not using it then. So I put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of other people's time and effort into something that if I had made one phone call right at the beginning,
They would have said no right away. Oh,
yeah,
that's rough.
I learned a lot.
That kind of thing happens though. I mean, that's I think it's fairly common that, new products come on the market and, some owners are fine with using new products, and especially larger municipal jobs, they want nothing to do with it unless
Mm-hmm.
unless it's been proven, because, public funds especially, they've got to make sure it's a proven track record, and they get second guessed so often. That's a tough way to go for sure.
Absolutely. And yeah, I totally understood where they were coming from, but young
Doesn't make it any
estimator,
easier.
yeah, the young estimator I was a little deflated.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. Cool. Well, I mean, I'm glad you came out of it okay, and I'm sure that the project went okay by the time you guys actually got things moving on it.
Well, we actually didn't win.
No.
After all that, when we went to our we went to do it the conventional way.
Yeah.
We ended up placing second.
Oh, that's never fun.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Mm.
Yeah, it worked out well. You're here now.
It's the way it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Ted, for coming on and sharing some of your horror stories on the end of the world in Precon, and how that can work, how that can feel really bad sometimes. But yeah, and again, for anyone who's listening, if you guys have some stories like that you'd like to share, or we can take all the names out of it. We can just talk about very generically if you would like, or if you want to come on and talk about anything else Precon related on the podcast, or physics and science related, we're open to that too.
Emphasis on the word geeks.
Yes, exactly. We can just drop the Precon part for another episode and just say we're just geeks on science. That'll work. But yeah, so thank you all for listening. And again, if you want to come on and give us a topic, or send us and come on the podcast, then feel free to send us an email at precongeek@beck-technology.com. You can also go to our website, www.beck-technology.com. Again, check out our blog posts. Suzanne's always posting really good content there for anyone in the industry. And you can also go to our community pages and talk to us through the forums on there. But until next time, we'll catch you guys on that one. Have a good one.